Greetings. My name is Pamela Ayoyatunde, and I am, along with Cheryl A. Giles, the co-editor of Black and Buddhist, What Buddhism Can Teach Us About Race, Resilience, Transformation, and Freedom. Welcome to this conversation with Insight Meditation Dharma teacher, writer, visionary, and entrepreneur, Ruth King. This conversation is going to take place in two parts. Ruth, I have some questions for you. Then we'll open the floor so that people have ample time to hear your responses to their questions. But before we get into your writings, Ruth, I wonder if you wouldn't mind if we go down memory lane about 2 decades ago. Yeah, see, you already know. 2 decades plus, okay? We're going back 20 plus years to the San Francisco East Bay, where we first met.
Yeah.
When we weren't even practicing Buddhists.
That's
Is that
right.
okay? Can we go back?
We can go back. Let's do it.
Okay. Then we'll come to the present. All right. So I can't remember. Maybe you can help jog my memory. I can't remember. Better put my timer on. I can't remember if we met around our writings. Because looking at your book, Healing Rage, Women Making Inner Peace Possible, it says that the copyright is 2007. But if I recall correctly, you were doing that work before 2007. Is that right?
That's right. So I actually self-published the book in 2004, and then Penguin picked it up in 2007. But the book was written based on the Celebration of Rage retreat I had run in the Bay Area for about 15 years. So the book came after just being saturated in the ceremony of healing rage. And I think it was in that time that we might have met, in that 2004, maybe even sooner than that.
Yeah, it was. I know it was sooner because my book, Beyond 40 Acres and Another Pair of Shoes, came out in 1998. Okay. And so I know we met sometime around there.
Yeah, that's right.
But when, given your explanation about the work the retreats that you were holding, then the book you wrote, sometimes people say, I want to write something, but I have no idea what to write about. I can't think of a good idea that hasn't already been written about. And so I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing with people what you think about the concept of just writing about the work that you're already engaged in.
Yeah. Well, if I can go back a little bit to that memory lane piece.
Okay.
You had written your book before I even thought about writing a book. Right? 40 Acres and a Mule came out. And one of the things that I was struck by was the way you had organized your thinking. So this is kind of a backwards way of answering your question. But because I think organizing what one wants to say is always the rub in writing, right? You have an idea and the thoughts are always bigger than what ends up on the page. And there's this sifting that you go through to where the writing actually informs you what wants to be written instead of what you might have initially thought. And then the jewel of what ends up on the page, and how potent that can be to the reader, is really what I think becomes important. So I remember Zenchu, Earthling Manual, saying to me back when I was writing, she was during that time as well, very instrumental in my life. And she said, at some point, you make a decision to let the reader in. And that shifts the attention of the writing from what you might just write as a journal for your own investigation to how are you writing to let the reader in. So therefore, what do they need in order to receive the intent that you have in the writing? So I was informed in the writing of Healing Rage and with the Mindful of Race work the book is a reflection of the work that informed how the book would be expressed. So, yeah, the work itself is what informed the writing. And then as I wrote, the structure of what needed to be said and the way it needed to be said organized itself through the deep listening, being responsible for knowing you have impact, listening to the ancestors, which moves through my nervous system, through my heart, keeps me in check, right? Keeps me resident in the body, grounded with a truth that my mind might want to take me in a different direction, but the alignment in the body might be telling me elsewhere. The ego might want to take me somewhere else. The fear stories that flood the mind, like who the hell do you think you are? What right do you think you have to write? And you're not good enough. And it's all been said. All of that becomes the background elevator music, while the heart and the ancestors actually are keeping you clean about what ends up on the page. But it is maddening, writing. It's nothing simple about it, or I can't even say I enjoy it. What I can say is that it's not something I cannot do, right? It's like, it's not like this option where I cannot write. So I feel it's more of not only the privilege I have, but the responsibility I have to dignify the voices that need to come up and out, and that I'm used in a way to kind of present that and offer that. Hopefully that's palpable and good medicine.
Yes. Okay. So Ruth, some of the things that I picked up in what you said was, yes, you can write about the work, but it sounds like you also need to create some space for yourself to reflect on the work you are doing, because who else can write better about the work that you're doing than yourself? But then that voice, that Audre Lorde talks about, that thin, persistent voice that comes up when you say, who are you to write this? Comes up, and you ask yourself, how can I be like a vessel for this message? That's what I hear you say.
Yeah, because you need something more than ego to get it on the page. I mean, it's not like, a lot of good stuff and helpful stuff is out there that's practical and what have you. But I feel like my work is medicine. That's how I feel about it. And I feel very responsible to the reader. I feel responsible for making sure, it's alchemical. I want to make sure I'm offering the right dosage for the right diagnosis, that the body can take it, that the heart is ready. So there's a lot of attending I try to do in my prescription, and I do write in a way that's a bit prescriptive. So yeah.
Okay. All right, medicine. So I want to kind of stay on that for a moment, okay? But still staying in the San Francisco East Bay.
Okay.
So, because while there, we two Black, same gender loving women decided to move south. And that's crazy. In a way, that's just crazy. But I learned that you moved to Charlotte after I had moved to Atlanta, and it was in 2008 when we both moved to the South. And obviously something was happening in your world and in my world, in our parallel Dharma worlds and lives, that we reconnected via email about our frustrations in white sanghas in the South.
Yeah.
So you're right. You remember? So your book, You remember. Medicine for your own frustration.
Right,
Perhaps.
right. That's right.
Full of race, right? Mindful of Race, Transforming Racism from the Inside Out came out in 2018. Here's a cover. Okay. And y'all, and when I say y'all, I mean everybody. This book needs to be in your collection. It needs to be read and applied. It's a classic. And I don't use that word lightly. It is a classic on how we can coexist with deeper relationships in our sanghas and elsewhere. And I'm going to get back to that topic later, Ruth. But talking about medicine for your own frustration, can you talk about how frustration, coupled with your medicine, which is writing, led to your creation of what is now called the Mindful of Race Institute?
Ooh, so those are that just almost covers a life's territory. Because I don't know. I think we wake up to what's always been there all along. So just speaking to moving south, I mean, I moved here because my now wife lived here. I blame it on her, right? But in some ways, I feel like I was coming full cycle because my family fled the South, and moved west for a better life, so to speak. And I feel like I came back here, not intentionally necessarily, but stumbled into the experience of living in the South, which had this quality of polite hostility and unfinished business energetically in the field. So when I found myself here, I mean, everybody was so nice, but there was also this sense of, why does it not feel, something was out of sorts. So I think part of coming here was to understand that, to reconnect, to why people left, to why people stayed. And I ended up landing in a sangha, a predominantly white sangha, that was a major challenge for me, a major challenge for a sense of really feeling displaced and too big for the space. And so therefore, I needed to be tucked in. And just the whole body's reaction to that, the allergic reaction I had, which is, some of that is being in the West and then coming to the South. But I think it's also just this kind of shaping of a lot of our sanghas that feel tight and oppressive, but not because something's happening, but mainly because it's the field that we're in, the energetic that we're in, the unresolved that we're in, and how that plays when we get still. It all gets amplified. So I found myself in a sangha that felt unbearable, but I made a decision that I was going to stay there until I learned, so that I could leave on my terms, so that I could leave in a way where I felt like I was had finished the work, right? I mean, it was important to me to finish the work and not just leave the scene, but finish the work. And it occurred to me at some point that was the whole point of it, that my commitment is to be able to walk anywhere in the world without my heart closing. So how do I do that? I mean, right? How do I do that in these white places, in these places where my inside is not just irritated, but enraged? And how do I comfort myself? Because you can't necessarily rely on the environment to do that. And I needed to have that kind of inner control and understanding of my own reactivity, and I needed to be able to do that for myself. That's one of the attractions to the Dharma, that I could look for myself, know for myself, regulate a sense of inner stability that allows me to walk and deal, right? So I stayed until I could leave in what I call the dignified exit, where it was on my terms, not terms externally, but terms internally, where I was finished and settled and clear so that I could leave. And that whole process of, not that I haven't been in that cycle a number of times, I felt like the completion around it was thorough and satisfying enough to where it brought a sense of clarity to a structure or a system of being able to write about it that was in service to other people being able to kind of maybe taste it and understand it. So that was a big impetus for the book. But it's also my life, you know, it's me working in these corporations and being in systems. It's a liability that we have, a lot of us as Black folks, because we see clearly. We're not crazy in what we're seeing. I think we're challenged with how we navigate the truth of it without running ourselves crazy, without dying on the vine, without becoming ill. And I just feel like that's been a ripening that's been happening over the years that supports a mindful of race kind of birth, where we're dropping the distress of racism right into the heart of the Dharma, right into the heart of our practice, right? Our practice in the Dharma and mindfulness is, you know, the Buddha specialized in suffering. So there is no greater suffering in my mind, in my life, in this elder body, than just this kind of recurrence and oppressive structural insistence of racism. I mean, so in my mind, the Dharma was created as a system of meaning, a mechanism of understanding our relationship to that so that we can fortify internally, become more stable, and do what must be done, but not from a place of rage, but from a place of fierce clarity, right? So that became what the book is intending. It's like, how do I work with all that gets activated? It's not like we're ever going to be totally done with our traumas, but how do I get that? How do I understand that? How do I let wisdom drive this car and not my stories, you know, about who's wrong or what's wrong? But what do I need to do here, right? That's what I'm looking at, you know?
Let me jump in for a moment, Ruth. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you could have stopped at the book, right? I say it's a classic. You could have stopped at the book, but you didn't. So you've got people coming to you.
Right.
Ruth, instruct me, help me to do
Yeah.
what? What happens at the Institute?
Yeah. So the Institute is basically saying, let me go back to a point that's been core in my life as well. My dad was a plumber. He owned a few plumbing companies in South Central Los Angeles when I was growing up. And he showed me a diagram once of the underground plumbing system, the layout of the piping and how things connected underneath this construction building. And I was fascinated to see that the piping had to be at certain levels in order for the water to flow and all of these interconnections. I'll never forget that, because I think that there are systems at play that make things flow. And we need to understand the system in order to flow, you know, for our waters to flow through, we see the beauty on the outside, but what's underneath is a system of meaning. And the Dharma represents a system of meaning. The Institute is intended to represent a system of meaning, a mechanism for which to guide you internally to understand your racial conditioning and how it trips you up and how it can free you up. So the Institute is pointing you to an investigation of your inner conditioning so that you can make some new deals with that, so that you can purify your system, your nervous system, your body system, your alchemy, so that you can attend to that and respond differently. So it's just like what I did when I came to the South here. And I made the deal, I'm going to stay with this until I can figure out a way to leave from a place of choice and wisdom, not from a place of, you piss me off and I'm out of here, right? So the Institute is really providing the structures, the plumbing system, the guidance that supports you in investigating your heart and mind and how it plays in the body and your response to the world around race and racism. Really understanding yourself within community with your own folks. So it provides a healing womb. It's womb work, it's womb ways. It provides a container, like for one of the programs is a racial affinity group development program, where you attend with your cohort, with members of your own race, and you go through this year-long journey of not only understanding your racial conditioning, but paying attention to how it plays within your cohort, how it feels to talk about this together, how it feels to develop a language. Who am I without the conversation of white folks? Or who am I if I'm not relying on people of color to teach me about whiteness, right? So you're in this womb looking at these deeply pointed questions around your conditioning and then feeling into what it's like to be in community with that, which translates into how you walk in the world and how you serve in the world.
I'm sorry, Ruth, to interrupt. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. You talk about womb. I want to say a couple other things as we start moving from San Francisco to the present moment, which is we connected again in Minnesota when you spoke at Common Ground Meditation Center. And when someone said, hey, we're inviting Ruth, I'm like, yes, let me be a part of helping Ruth get here. Because I trust you, I've observed you. And then, I thought I knew you. But then when you, as the womb maker, held us, diverse group of people in these conversations about race, I said, yeah, you can't just read the book. You actually do need to show up and rub up against folks and have someone, Ruth, guide that. So I want to say, please, people, you can't just read about this and change. But reading is important to getting into the Institute. I want to change subjects for a moment, if it's okay with you. Okay, cool. Excellent. So, but before I do that, I just want to underscore that the way you dealt with your frustration resulted in a book, an incredible book that also resulted in an incredible institute. And so people just take this as an example that your frustration need not be turned inward, right? To become destructive anger.
Beautiful.
Can be turned in,
Yeah. It's a composting process, right? We're composting, and that is what hopefully life can teach us, that we're learning all the time. It's not like we're gonna get it and we're gonna be there. This life is messy and beautiful, and when the plumbing gets clogged, you gotta clean out the pipes and keep going, right?
Keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
Okay. Back to our parallels for a moment.
Yeah.
You're a psychotherapist.
Well, I was trained
as one. Okay, we were both trained in psychotherapy.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this question comes to you from someone who works in psychotherapy to someone trained in psychotherapy.
Okay.
In your chapter in our book, Black and Buddhist, your chapter, Wholeness is No Trifling Matter,
Yeah.
Race, Faith, and Refuge, you make the case that there are a variety of ways we become wounded early in life, in many places, throughout life, and there's really no escape from the dynamic of being hurt. And you make the case that wholeness requires a sustained effort, right? So much in our culture, as it relates to Black-bodied people, tells us that we are to be feared because we are innately criminal, we are destined to illness, body, mind, spirit, destined to servitude and poverty. So my question to you, counselor, to someone who studied psychotherapy, how can we become to understand that each of us is worth that sustained effort?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Well, it's no trifling matter, right? Wholeness. It's really not a joke. And one of the reasons I use that title in the book, Wholeness is No Trifling Matter, is because Tony Cade Bambara was really talking about Velma, who was, a Black activist in the community, who had what one would call mental health issues, right? And cut her wrists, right? Tried to off herself, and that the community came together to this one healer in particular came together, Minnie, and Minnie is the one asking the questions. And it's a repeat question, which happens a lot in therapeutic processes. And her repeat question as a healer was, are you sure, sweetheart, that you want to be well? Are you open to healing? Do you desire wellness? I can feel, sweetheart, that you're not quite ready to dump the shit. This is what she's repeating throughout the book. Now you just hold that thought, sweetheart, because wholeness is no trifling matter. And I think what this says, and how I relate so deeply to this passage, wholeness is no trifling matter, is because we have to consent to it. We have to consent breath by breath, and to be respected in the unfolding. Is not going to be clean. It's a messy journey. It's a life's work. And we are recommitting and recommitting again and again and again, because we're learning where it hurts and staying with it. I went through a number of years of therapy before being in the Dharma. And therapy is a beautiful place to understand the plumbing, right? And the Buddha Dharma is a beautiful place to uproot it, to purify it, to have it dissolve, right? So both of these systems are useful as we are in this life journey. But we commit again and again. We shake it off. We hum the songs. We remember our ancestors. We read about the Toni Morrisons and the Tony Cade Bambaras, and we listen to these podcasts where we have the young sister who was just speaking yesterday with Rhonda McGee, Dr. Rima Vessel-Vlad. We listen to our people that are telling the stories about Harriet Tubman and so on, and we give our heart to that. We we remember that the greatness is in there. We know that. We deeply know that. So a lot of this is kind of returning to the deep knowing that's there and trusting that, and bathing and resting in our deep, music. Listen to some of the, listen to Diana Washington and Etta James. I mean, we need to go to those places where we know that this is not just our lives. We're in a stream, and there's been many before us that have been dealing with this. We need to expand the trajectory, the view of how we look at our lives, not as my life, but as life, and place ourselves and surrender ourselves to knowing we're headed to the ocean, not, these are commas, so they're not periods. And we have to remember that that's what our life is. It's just messy and it's beautiful, and all of this is necessary. People that are listening to this already know. You already know what's deeply true. And this is like a delayering of taking off those layers that have broken our hearts and continue to break our hearts. There's no ignorant free zones where our hearts are gonna get broken. And so that's not gonna change. What's gonna change is the inner fortification and the plumbing system being flushed out with regularity so that it doesn't result in a crisis.
Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah.
So we're going to begin to transition to Q&A.
Oh,
But before we do that, I've got 3 questions, not for you to answer, but for the audience to contemplate, to write down,
beautiful.
to take with them after the end of this session, that come out of your chapter. But I made a little twist, because you ask yourself some questions in this chapter that I think we should all answer, especially now. So here are the 3 questions, audience, for your contemplation. And then we're going to go into Q&A. The first question, and you might say that's the same question, and it might be, but worded differently. Worded differently. Number 1, how do we do what must be done in the world without causing harm to ourselves or to others? And I'll put these questions in the chat. Number 2, what would it take for us to walk in a world of racial ignorance, being well and being whole, and not shutting others out of our hearts? And number 3, as bodhisattvas, how might we see all life as art, as ceremony in service to greater well-being for all? And here's, italicize this part, underline it, without exception.
Yeah.
Without exception. Okay, so let us now go into Q&A. And I've got some instructions that I'm going to read. Okay. We now have the opportunity for some live video questions. If you'd like to ask a question live, please write your question in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And the Q&A function is different than the chat function. Okay, so put it in the Q&A function. At the beginning, but don't write it yet. At the beginning of your question, write the word live in caps so that we know that you have a functioning microphone and camera. Then write your name and your question. If we choose your question, in about 5 minutes, you will hear me call your name, and then you will be brought on live. So please be ready. A window will pop up asking you to enable your camera and microphone. Click yes, and you will be on. So in these next few minutes, please write in your questions. And as people are writing in, we're going to begin with a written question that someone may have written in. We'll see who that is. Okay, questions are coming up, I do believe. In the meantime, Ruth, you've got about 30 seconds. If you want to add something else while the questions come in, please do.
Oh, yeah, I could say something about going back to Velma in the Salt Eater book of just thinking again of systems, right? The system that was so exquisite in the Salt Eater was in the healing of Velma, who was in this infirmary and was healing from cutting her wrist. Is it's described in the book that Velma was the fetus, Minnie was the healer, and the umbilical cord providing the lifeline and the partnership with Velma. And then there was a circle of 12 that surrounded them that represented the amniotic sac, the protection for Minnie, the healer that was supporting Velma. And then there were surrounding folks, which was referred to as the uterine wall, holding the field. And this was called the womb space of healing that was so powerful for Velma. And it speaks to a system of community and support. And you know, we have these healers in our community, and you know, so it just spoke to how we need each other in community, and it showed a way support can look. And when I think about the racial affinity group development program that I offer, it's offering this kind of circle of support and instruction that allows the tenderness and care that we need to be with the illness of racism and the internalization of that, and how it lives and where it drives us, and how it affects our relationships with each other, and how we step into the space of healing with that intention with each other. We need a structure. We need a system for that. We're not going to just patch it in our day-to-day busy lives. We need to devote ourselves to a structure, to a system that supports that intention. And that's what this work in the racial affinity group development program and the mindful of race training is really offering, this womb space for us to.
We have a question regarding that, Ruth. Thank you. I'm sorry, we do have a question.
All right, let's go with it.
From Jackie. This question is from Jackie.
All right.
Jackie, are you ready?
Sorry, it's going to be Jean.
Okay.
Okay.
Is Jean coming through the portal?
Sorry, just 1 second. We're having a little bit of a technical issue, but we're working to get Jean on so she can ask her question.
Okay, in the meantime, can I ask Jackie's question?
Let's see.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Jackie asked, sorry, Jackie, we couldn't bring you on live for some reason. How do we transform our white-centered Buddhist communities from within? Do you have to leave to be whole?
How do we transform them from within? Sometimes you have to leave to be whole. It depends on what your capacity is to sit in the discomfort. Sometimes we need our own people to feel like we can build that that kind of inner strengthening. So sometimes we need to be with our own people. And I think that the white sanghas need to wake up to whiteness. A lot of my work centers around that. It centers around the system of power and what's hard about letting go of that. So that centers often in white people who have built structures or institutions and organizations without a consciousness of their impact on other races. So the consciousness around that has to be an intention and a devotion to white folks and white leaders and sanghas. And, so in terms of BIPOC people, I've been in many sanghas where I've decided I'm going because I feel I can feel the Dharma teachings from the teacher. I want to learn from that teacher. I can go and sit with that teacher, and I decide I'm not going to take on the institution and all of those irritations other than dropping them into my practice. So I stay with that intention and work with what comes up. So I don't have to leave because I'm clear of why I'm there. And sometimes we do have to leave because, we've just seen the pattern enough and it's just not something that we need. But white institutions and white sanghas, I'm working with a number of them and have, need to really understand whiteness and the impact that has and the rippling effect that it has. The measure for me is not that they have a diverse sangha or that we can come there, and feel good. That's not necessarily the measure. The measure to me is whether they're aware of whiteness and how that plays. And when that starts changing from the inside out, it creates a vibration inside the sangha where we don't have to question as people of color, whether that work is actually happening because we can feel it and trust it more in the system, or we can trust ourselves more when we go into those systems to rest and do what we're there to do. So that's a bit of a response.
Thank you. Are we ready for Jackie's question?
So we have Jean's ready, Jean Lover, and then
Okay.
We could bring Jackie on after that to respond.
Okay, you know what? I think I'll let you all do the Q&A.
Okay, yeah, sorry about this. We were having a little bit of a technical difficulty with Zoom on the back end here, but Jean,
All right.
we're going to be bringing you on. So you should see in just a moment, you're going to see a question to enable your video and audio. Click OK, and then like you're here to ask your question.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is that, are you still in touch with that white sangha? And if so, why or why not? And what is it that you think that you could get from them? And what is it that you think you're missing? I mean, what would they talk about when they were together that you would find worth listening to? And what is it they were talking about that you weren't interested in? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to remember. There was a few pieces to that question. And maybe you can repeat the first part of your question again. So
Well, one is that are you still in contact with those people? And if so, why?
Mhm.
And then what's of value or wasn't of value? What were they doing that wasn't really useful to you that you would want to seek something else?
Okay, so in terms of still being in contact with them, I am. I actually go in and teach from time to time in the Sangha when I'm often invited, so I go and I teach. I used to be on the leadership team with that Sangha and decided that it wasn't a good fit for me. I was interested in working on issues of systemic racism and wanted to talk about that in the Sangha and wanted to engage the community around that, but there wasn't a willingness necessarily for that to be a point of focus or centeredness. So it just wasn't a good fit for me and what I wanted to do and the way I wanted to express the Dharma. I don't know. I mean, I think there were many things they talked about that were of value. So it wasn't so much about the value. I think the interest was not, and the consciousness around their sense of race and racism there wasn't enough awareness there that supported the kind of ways I wanted to talk about the Dharma. So that was my reason for knowing. I still go from time to time to listen to talks. And again, sometimes I teach, but my work and my heart is really in race and racism and the Dharma. And I want to be creative with that and free and talking about that without feeling a sense of restriction. Thank you for your question, Jean.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to see if we can bring Jackie on now to follow up on her question. So that looks like she's coming on. And Jackie, we see that you're there. You might need to unmute yourself. There you are.
Yes, I'm here.
Jackie?
Hi. I'm joining from Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
And I'm a 46-year practitioner in the Nichiren tradition. Okay. And my question had been about transforming our communities from within and whether or not we have to leave to be whole. I feel like right now I've kind of got one foot in and one foot out, and even the stresses of that is difficult to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of give me some guidance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a common question too, Jackie, that we all that I hear a lot. Do I need to leave the Sangha? And so part of the pointing is really looking at what gets activated, right? What gets triggered in what's actually happening when you feel like you need to leave. And what I've done in the past is I've slowed that down a bit so that I can feel in and know that this is not going to kill me, right? But even though the energetic of it might be intense. But I want to slow down and really take some breaths right in those intersections where it feels like I might just need to leave here. I think, this practice is intended to, what this practice says to me is I should be able to walk anywhere without closing my heart down. So that's my commitment. Can I keep the heart? Can I keep the heart open? Can I breathe through this and know it's a moment? So what happens is the flood of life fills in all the space, all of the stuff that's happening in the world. I'm working on multi-levels, right? So what I say to people sometimes is, especially to Black folks, we need to learn how to bid or pass. I grew up playing bid with. I don't know about you.
Yes.
You get dealt some cards and then you got a partner, right? And then you're playing against these folks. And so racism's like that. You get dealt some cards. That's your situation. You've got a partner, which is your commitment to your practice. And then you've got these opponents that are trying to, not intentionally always, but messing up the game, right?
Yeah.
And we have to decide if we're going to bid or pass. If we're going to take this on, if we're going to work this issue, at what level am I going to work this issue? At the individual level, which is saying, I'm hurt, or this is happening to me. My story about how unbearable that is, that's the individual level. Do I want to confront that? Do I want to tell this system this about how you hurt me? Individual. Do I want to talk about the group level in this situation? Do I want to get on the board and represent the collective voices of BIPOC people in this Sangha so that I can begin to help folks see what's happening? Do I want to do that, right? Or do I want to work the systemic level of being on more in a leadership role of driving the way the Sangha learns about itself and what have you? But we can't bid on every single thing, and we can't address all three of those levels at the same time. It's not that we can't, I just think we can be more choiceful in where we put our energy. Our energy is sacred. We have to be choiceful of how we use it. In this elder body, I'm very choiceful these days of where I'm going to put my energy. I want to put it in places where I know people are listening. I want to put it, so this is what drives. Is this a place that's going to listen to me when I raise an issue? If that repeat pattern is no, that ain't happening, it might be time to go. But is this a place where it brings up my edge to a peak where it allows me to purify from the inside, to dissolve from the inside my agitation so that it's not about them, it's about my relationship to what's happening? Mm-hmm. And that's another choice point. But I feel like we have to put choice in front. We know we have a choice. Yeah. When we're in these institutions, and we can choose to stay and work with our own stimulation. We could choose to address the issue, or we can choose to leave, but choose as opposed to being in reaction or being in a belief story that this is never going to change. This is always going to be the same. Nothing is always going to be the same, even though there's some long-term patterns here. Yes. So that's a real challenge to our practice, right? Yeah. To question impermanence. Are you really believing that this only happens to you? Are you really believing that this is never going to change? Are you really believing this is personal? I say a lot, it's not personal, it's not permanent, and it's not perfect, right? Just a hot mess, and we're choosing all the time and hopefully ripening our heart, knowing that everything we do is planting a seed. Mm-hmm. What do you want to bloom? I mean, that's a big responsibility in this practice, that we're responsible for the seeds we're planting. Mm-hmm. I hope that's helpful, Jackie.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
I needed that.
Right? Gosh, I so know that place in me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We may have time for one more question.
All right.
Okay, we have Daryl asking a question. And so Daryl, if you're seeing something to enable your video and audio, go ahead and click yes, and then you'll be on with us in just a moment. Looks like Daryl's here, and it'll just take him a second to unmute.
Okay.
And there you are.
Okay, here I am. So my question is, hi, Ruth and everyone. Thank you so much. So I'm currently doing a group book study on Your Mindful of Race. I'm co-sponsoring with another gentleman. And so I'm in Williamsburg area, the Buddhist Sangha group down here. And I'm actually the only person of color in the book study. And I sometimes, actually all the time, I find myself becoming really passionate about this book study. And and I don't know, but in my in my being, I sometimes feel that my group may see it as me getting overly anxious or maybe angry, but I'm not angry with them. But I'm very passionate, and I let them know that usually after my sharing or at the end of the book study, because I do want them to no, sorry.
Uh-oh, I think we lost him.
Daryl, come back to us.
We'll be
Please.
looking for Daryl so we can see if we can bring him back on. I don't know if maybe his internet cut out,
Okay.
but we'll be looking to see if we can bring him back on.
It's
And,
such an important question. That's for sure.
While you're looking for Daryl, let me say something funny about Ruth. Ruth talks about, you know, conserving her energy because, you know, she's a woman of a certain age. But let me just say, one of my favorite memories of you, Ruth, a recent memory was of you dancing in the Soul Train line at a gathering of Black Buddhist teachers. You and Gina Sharp going down the line like y'all were just, you know, teenagers. So don't believe what Ruth is saying about herself, is what I'm telling you all.
That's right.
Lots of energy, but not a lot of energy for the resistance, right?
Yeah. I mean, really. You know, it's important. You know, I get a lot of play right now from different folks that want me to come in and talk. A lot of white groups wanting, because we're in this cycle where there's a lot happening in race. There's always been a lot happening in race, and so there's this burst of interest that's driven by the horrors, right, of the news cycle, the images that we have so immediately and repeatedly, right? But you know, people forget after the news cycle changes. So another way of bidding and passing has to do with where you say yes. You know, I want to say yes to places where people are seeing this as a life's work, not just as a news cycle. And I'm not interested in relieving the anxiety of white people around this issue unless we are really looking at the uprooting of some of the conditioning that plays in it. So that's another way of talking about bid and pass and using my energy and
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Oh,
Ruth.
Daryl is back.
Daryl's back, and we want to get his question before he might have to leave again. And Daryl, your question will be the last question.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry. I'm on an iPhone and I don't know, somebody tried to call me and I tried to deny it, but it didn't. But anyway, so while studying, and I find myself getting passionate, and they know. So, and I think mostly it comes from, you know, first of all, I'm from down south too, and I moved. This is still considered South, but I'm from Alabama. I'm from deep South, so I understand when you guys are talking about the emotional struggles and how, you know, things. We feel things deeply coming from, you know, our ancestral coming from that area because we know what happened. But anyway, but I feel sometimes I get passionate because of the deflection techniques that are used when we get deep in the conversation and have to really look, especially when my white partners have to look at themselves.
Well, let me speak to this because I know our time is a little short, and I want you to know I'm feeling you, I'm feeling you on this question. Two things. One is there's a section in the book where I talk about the 6 hindrances to racial harmony. I'm talking about cumulative impact. And that's what happens with us when we are engaging in mixed race. A lot of white people come as good individuals, innocent, and this is new. Folks like us come with a truckload of history and pain and hope And that
Yeah.
all gets animated and we get hopeful. So it's not about tampering that down, it's about understanding.
Sure.
And if you all read that in the book together, maybe you'll be able to have a different kind of discussion. The other piece is it's very challenging for mixed races to be in discussion with this work together. I usually find that it's helpful for white folks to study the book together, people of color to study the book together. After they've done that, come together to talk about the book. Because what happens otherwise is people of color, who are usually the minority in the group in terms of numbers, but also in energetic, we end up holding some of the weight and the bruising that can happen from the ignorance and innocence of white people. And there's no reason why white people can't work on a lot of this themselves to wake up to their own conditioning. So you're working double duty in your setting by being the only white person of color. And I think the book will support you in having more of an understanding conversation when you get to that section on the hindrances. So
and real quickly, I'm sorry for cutting out, but that's where we are right now. We're talking about white people studying the book themselves, and us studying the book, and usually when I sat down to do the study, I said to myself in my mind that I'm not gonna say it, I'm not gonna comment, I'm gonna listen. I want to listen to see how they handle the situation, how they work this out, and then invariably I always end up either they're asking me my experiences, and then once I start talking about my experiences, you're right, it overflows with emotion a lot of times. So thank you so much.
Yeah, many white people feel like the issue of race is a people of color issue, and that's the big thing that needs to be challenged. It's it's largely a white issue, and white people need to do a bit of catching up on how plays. The best to you, Daryl, in that.
That's what I want to know. What's the best for me? Go ahead.
Keep the passion alive. Keep the passion alive, Daryl.
Thank you so much.
I thought we were just getting started. I knew we were just getting started with Ruth. And I thought,
I love you too, because I listen to your stuff as well. You guys are great. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Daryl.
I'm just excited.
And so are we. It's time to bring our time to a close.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that we can't do the Soul Train line together as a group, 500 of us online, but I do, in all sincerity, in all seriousness, Ruth, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the causes and conditions that brought us together in San Francisco, that led us to the South, reconnecting there, then again in the North, and here right now. And you have written plenty. You did not have to contribute to Black and Buddhist, but you did. And our book is so much better for your contribution.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, when I was rereading your chapter, I said, dang, this is a good book. And then I looked at the covers like, oh, this is our book. So for all you are, all you do, all the holding, the womb space, for us to re-enter and come out reborn, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Aya. What a blessing. Thanks for holding the space for all of us and for shepherding this book, which I get excited about reading again and again. It really is a jewel. So thank you for holding that. Thanks to you and Cheryl for that.
Thank you.
And for this beautiful community. Yeah.
Thank
I
you
so
all.
enjoyed this.